Hello again, Robert.
Oh, hi, Ams. If this is about the other night, you know, dressed as a chicken wearing a fez eating pork pies while singing those weird songs on the guitar, I promise it won't happen again.
Hang on a minute. I thought we were painting busts.
Oh yeah, busts. My name's Rob, and this is dressed as this is Cattle Rabbit Scale Model Studios. So recently I painted up this absolutely fantastic Death Corpse of Krieg bust that was printed by my friend Emma, or on Darkened Wings as you may know them on YouTube. I will put a link to their YouTube in the comments and the description. Do make sure you go and check them out. They do some absolutely amazing stuff with scenery and just different applications of paint that you might not be thinking of. A fantastic human, and I'm very lucky to know them. Emma kindly printed off this fantastic bust that I've wanted for so long now, and they actually agreed to paint one alongside. So Emma's going to do a video as well, which do go and check out after this. To start with, we've got this, and you can see the detail for itself. Lovely resin cast. It doesn't need a lot of cleanup, but any small imperfections, I do run a jewelry file set just over to smooth over any lumps, bumps, anything that I kind of didn't want there. I also come in with a hobby knife just to make sure that everything is nice and smooth. This is something that just happens with the 3D printing process, but it doesn't require a lot of cleanup at all. Next up is a prime. So I'm going to come in with Chaos Black and almost like a Zenithal highlight from the front with Zandri dust, and this is what I'm left with. My shadows are incredibly defined and my light bits are incredibly easy to see. I am going to quickly paint any hard to reach places like the neck with black, because you're not going to see it anyway, so I'm going to do that. Now, starting on the coat, we are going to do Night Lord's Blue, Mccragge Blue, Altdorf Blue, and Calgar Blue. The reason why I'm starting with the overalls is because I find it a lot easier to work from the, I guess, the inside out. All the other details are on top of this, so that's why I start with the blue overalls. I really wanted to go for a traditional Krieg look, so that's why I've chosen this kind of royal blue. Now, the application on this is just getting a good solid base coat. Then I come in with Mccragge Blue and I add, which would be my, I guess, my mid-tone. My Night Lord's Blue is actually what gives me my shadows and my depth, and Mccragge is actually the, I guess, the standard base colour. And all I do is I work around just all the raised areas, nice and simple, nothing fancy here, until we get to the Altdorf Blue. Instead of doing smooth highlights, which a lot of people will be very familiar with, I'm actually doing loads of jagged, staggered little lines just to create texture in that cape. This is a great way of adding detail to your miniatures, as it can give the effect of a well-worn, scuffed overall. You can apply this to miniatures as well. I've got the courtesy of having a bit more room to work. But I just worked my way around the model, and then I actually decided to come in with some blue horror just at the end for the sharpest points. But once again, the application is the same: short, sharp, tiny brush strokes to give a very weathered effect. This is what we're left with. I think it looks really, really cool. You know, to me that screams scuffed overalls. Just a really clever way of adding texture to a model. You know, sometimes we're taught, especially by GW, to, you know, get those sharp highlights, but sometimes we need a little more than that. And to bring out the realism in this piece, I really wanted to focus on texture. Next up is the brown leather sections. I'm going to do all these the same, so the backpack and his little breather box type thing he's got on the front, and the colours are going to be Rhinox Hide, Thondia Brown, Steel Legion Drab, and then Karak Stone. And the application for this is once again very similar. I'm going to try and add some scuffs, some texture, just to really bring this model to life. So with a really good base coat of Rhinox Hide. I actually think I went over this a couple of times. That's the backpack, all the straps, and the little box on the front. Just making sure I had a really strong base colour to start with. Then I come in with Thondia Brown. Once again, I'm just using this as my actual colour, so Rhinox Hide becomes the shadow sections. And then Steel Legion Drab. Once again, I come in and I just start to add tiny dashes and lines and marks and scuffs, just in a bit of an erratic fashion, focusing more on the edges of things where things would get knocked and little scratches would appear, you know, during wear and tear and usage and things like that. And I just take my time. I actually had a lot of fun doing this section, especially on the backpack, as it's such a big area. It's a lot of scope to do a lot of bits. And then same again with Karak Stone. Once again, I focus on the corners and some of the raised sharper edges, like the edge of straps around the backpack, some of the raised detail that the model has sculpted into it. But once again, I just, a couple of passes, little flicks, little dashes here and there, and we're left with, you know, a really cool effect. Once again, a really good way to make worn leather look like worn leather on a very flat surface. So that was once again Rhinox Hide, Thondia Brown, Steel Legion Drab, and Karak Stone. Next up, I'm going to show you how I painted the eyes. Now, I started with a 50-50 mix of Yriel Yellow and White Scar, and I base coated the eyes in. Then I come in with some Iyanden Yellow contrast paint. This I'm going to paint over the entirety of the lens, and in this step you do have to work a little bit quicker, as we really want the eyes to look like they've got a bit of a glow to them. So what I do first is making sure everything pulls nicely on the edges of the eyes, but making sure everything is completely covered. And then while it's still wet, I actually come in with my mix of Yriel Yellow and White Scar, and I then start to layer in the side. Effectively what I'm doing here is I'm blending the paints, or wet blending the paints, actually on the miniature. And this is a great effect to kind of mix those colours in and get a very natural transition to look like they are glowing. I do this a few times, and I mix a bit more White Scar in with each pass, and I just make sure that I've built it up enough that I'm happy with the eyes are shining quite bright in the middle. I hope I've explained that well enough. If you're not, let me know in the comments below and I will clarify. And then all I do in the next section, we are going to move on to the cloth, but for the breather kind of gas mask section, I do base coat all of it with Agrax Earthshade. This is not so much because I want it to have a wash on it. I kind of try to avoid washes sometimes quite actively, but it lets me quite clearly see where the raised details are, because the shade will settle, so I can actually go back and fill in those colours myself. What I want for the mask, and you can see here that I've actually kind of completed this section of it, is I wanted it to be almost look very soft, almost like a suede type of feel to it. And to do this, what I do is I'm blocking everything with Zandri dust. I then come in with Karak Stone. Once again, Zandri dust will be our shadows, Karak Stone will be our normal colour, and then what I do is I mix in a little bit of White Scar with the Karak Stone in each pass, and then I actually add a little bit of extra depth using Baneblade Brown. But once again, showing you on the backpack, it's short, sharp, little kind of brush strokes, just to give the effect of like a soft kind of material. And all I do is I just do, once again, a few passes over and over till I'm happy with how it looks. And now we're left with this section, which is all the metals. This is a really fun section for me to do, because we are going to do some slightly different applications. So the colours are going to be Leadbelcher, Fang Steel. Then we're going to give everything a really heavy wash with Agrax Earthshade. We're then going to reapply some of the metallics, but then we are going to come in with some Basilicanum Grey, it's a tongue twister, contrast paint, just to add some depth to some of the armour panels. To start with, I base coat everything with Leadbelcher. This is exactly the same, I'm just making sure I've got a really good solid colour on absolutely everything. Then, using a sponge and some tweezers, I actually dab Rune Fang Steel all over, and then it's followed by a very heavy wash with Agrax Earthshade. The reason why I dab the paint on is because it gives a natural kind of metallic effect over the Leadbelcher. You've got that cool different contrast between a dark metal and a light metal. Once the shade was dry, I go back in with Leadbelcher with the sponge, and I focus on all the ridges and the edges of the armour panels and things like that, especially the gun. I then come in with some Rune Fang Steel and I do some little scratches and scuffs using the same short, sharp little brush strokes we've been doing for the majority of this model. Once that's all done, obviously the gun casing did get a wash of Basilicanum Grey that I did mix up with a little bit of contrast medium, just so it wasn't too harsh, but I did add the Leadbelcher and the Rune Fang Steel scratches to it just to bring it to life. Next up, all the gold detail. This is just Retributor Armour, and I do give it a wash with Agrax Earthshade just to tone it down and keep it more in line with the drab colours of the miniature, and that's really what we are left with. Once again, that was just Retributor Armour, Agrax Earthshade, and then I do some fine scratches using Leadbelcher. I do find Rune Fang Steel is a little bit too bright for what I wanted, so it was nice to have a toned down metallic there. That's really it. You can apply this method to your miniatures. I do come in with a Bad and Black on the hose, and I give it a dry brush with Leadbelcher, and that's it. It's just a great example of how application can really enhance an already fantastically detailed model. So I will cut to the money shots right now. I am going to carry on talking for a bit. Once again, these videos do take a lot of time to produce and do. If you do want to help the channel out, then please do consider just dropping a like, sharing this with a pal, or subscribing. It means the absolute world to me. And also do go and check out Emma's video. I'm sure no matter what they've come up with, it's going to be just something you haven't experienced yet and give you a new way of thinking about how you apply paint to models. That's all from me in this one. I do hope this helped and you enjoyed it. Sorry about my croaky voice, I am feeling a little bit under the weather, but I will see you all next time. God bless, take care, and I'll see you all soon.